Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this. Welcome along to the latest episode of VODCAST podcast. Released a little bit later this week, but I'm sure you all won't mind. Obviously, we'll put it out on Facebook as well. So if you were found wondering where the podcasts were when you went onto the podcast app on Thursday morning, just give us a follow on social media if you don't already, because we put all the information out there that obviously we were going to be releasing this one a little bit later. But it does give us a chance to do some things a little bit differently and give us a little bit of an insight into the sort of things that we might or are hopeful of doing next season. What we've done is we've had about an half an hour's long chat with Alex James, sports journalist from Lancs Live, who covers Burnley Football Club, goes to all the Burnley games and things like that. And so we've had an half an hour chat with him. We had it on day of recording, which is today, Friday. Straight after he came out of the press conference. I say came out, obviously it's now on Zoom, isn't it, the press conferences. So straight after he came out of a Zoom call with Sean Dyche and the rest of the journalists for the Burnley press conference. So we got all the lowdown from Alex on injuries, Sean Dyche rumours, and you know, we looked ahead to the game against Sheffield United this weekend on Sunday as well. But anyway, we'll just get straight into it, shall we? Here is Alex James. Right, first of all, Alex, just want to say a big welcome back to VODCAST podcast. Obviously, you've been on before, but welcome again. It's about time you came on when we actually had some football to talk about. Because obviously, last time was middle of lockdown, weren't it, when the Premier League was frozen. So, thanks for coming on, mate.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's nice to have some football to centre the week around, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think last time when we got on, we just had to basically I don't know, I can't even remember what we spoke about. I look back at the podcast and I think, what the hell did I talk about for so long? It's absolutely mad. But obviously, you've been to the press conference today, or should I say you've been on the Zoom call. Obviously, you don't do press conferences anymore. So obviously I want to chat about what went on at the press conference as well. I presume there was a lot of chat about injuries and stuff like that. What's the latest on all the injuries?
Yeah, it's as everyone will be aware that the Burnley injury list seems to be growing by the game at the moment. I think the vibe from Sean Dyche was that Jay Rodriguez stands a good chance of being back in the side for Sunday against Sheffield United, and Johan Bergen Munson also available. But I'd be very, very surprised to see him in the team. But he might well be able to pad out the bench if nothing else. Ashley Barnes and Matt Loughton, I think we knew beforehand they weren't going to be around, and they're still absent. Chris Wood and Robbie Brady have trained, but Dyche did say they had a chance, but I just can't see it. I don't think they've got enough training in there to be considered fit enough for Sunday. And similarly, Jack Cork, Dyche used the phrase a question mark, and generally speaking, when Sean Dyche speaks about injuries, if there is a little doubt or they're not quite where he wants them to be fitness-wise, then they don't feature, as we saw with J-Rod at Palace. So I guess there's a chance for Corky, but I wouldn't expect him to be involved either. So that does leave a few questions in midfield. So
is it looking like it's just going to be Jay then from the list of the walking wounded?
That's my take on it. Yeah, I think Johan will be on the bench. And the only other one is Jack Cork. But just my personal read on the situation is that I'd be surprised to see him in the 11, which obviously could mean Brownhill moving inside, possibly Dwight going onto the right, and Eric Peters carrying on the left hand side of midfield.
So what's the latest on Wood then? Because I think obviously Wood's probably the player that we missed the most. Obviously he's got the most goals and stuff, and sort of like he holds a lot of the play up and stuff. What's the latest on him?
He's trained. He was pictured. The club put a few pictures out of training, so he has been back in training this week, albeit it's only light training alongside Robbie Brady. His injury's not a serious one, but I can't see him being available this weekend or on Wednesday. I just think the run of games is going to come too soon for him, and what Burnley and what Dyche don't want to do is re-aggravate any injuries. We've seen that with Johan and Robbie Brady to a lesser extent, that they've just been injured for so long, haven't they? So they're playing the long game of trying to get them back 100% fit. And it was interesting today that Dyche mentioned about the lack of under 23 games or reserve games or even behind closed doors games at the minute, and the difficulties in arranging them mean that they can't get match minutes in either. So that's not helping the situation. We all know that usually Burnley like to get a couple of, they call them bounce games, into these players before they come back into the season, and that's just not an option at the minute. So that's probably having a detrimental effect as well.
Yeah, you mentioned there Robbie Brady always seems to be injured, as does obviously Johan. Like you said, Johan could be on the bench this week, but where is Robbie Brady? Because obviously recently signed a new contract as well, and I think with Robbie, obviously, a lot of us were hoping that he might be able to, put a shift in towards the end of the season now. But obviously, he's still injured as well. So where's he at the minute?
Yeah, similar to Chris Wood, I believe he's trained again this week, and I think he will be involved before the end of the season. But it just won't be this weekend, or I wouldn't have thought Wednesday night at West Ham either. But potentially the Liverpool game after that. But that's me sort of reading between the lines of what Sean Dyche said and sort of how he's approached it previously as well. But I think probably Ashley Barnes and maybe Matt Loughton are perhaps the only two we won't see again this season. I think Barnes just seems to be taking a little bit sort of longer than hoped to recover. He wasn't helped by the lockdown and the lack of sort of one-to-one physio care that you could have then. And he's come back in and just sort of re-aggravated on his recovery from his hernia. And Matt Loughton seems like quite a nasty... He's got a stress fracture on his foot. So that seems like quite a nasty one. Dyche hasn't given a timescale on that one, but again, just given the volume of games and how quickly they're coming, I mean, we're only 3 weeks away from the end of the season, really. So it might well be that we don't see him again this campaign.
Well, that's interesting then with Matt, because I wasn't aware of that. I knew he was injured, but as far as I'm aware, the club hadn't sort of like said the extent of the injury. Obviously, I don't click on every single link, I'll be honest with you, that the club do put out, so they might have put it on the website, for example. But he played against, who was it, the first game? City, didn't he? And I think, obviously, because Bardsley hadn't signed the contract by that point, so there was literally just Matt to play. Yeah. And he played the full game as well. Now, I think his brother put on Twitter that he got injured against Watford, but again, I don't remember him going off. So what's happened? Has he gone into a tackle or something like that, done something and then just carried on playing?
I don't have the full sort of scope of it, but yeah, I believe it was a match injury, and it's sort of been mentioned as a stress fracture of his foot. There's been no timescale. It's very rare that Dyche or Burnley put a specific timescale on injuries, and even when things are a couple of weeks, they tend to be, that can be anything from 10 days to a month some of the time. So it's just, by the way, Dyche was sort of instantly ruled him out of Sunday when we spoke to him at Crystal Palace on Monday, and again it was not he's a question mark or he's a doubt, it was he won't be fit. So just given the nature of that injury and perhaps the volume of games and the fact that there is a right back option there in Phil Bardsley, there's perhaps not the same need to rush him into a starting 11 as there might be with one or two of the others.
Yeah, you mentioned it there that Dyche and Burnley don't give much away. I like Dyche's little code as well. There's like touch and go, which means he's miles away. There's back on the grass, which means he might be back in a month. There's question mark, which means, who knows, basically. And then there's hopeful, which means he probably won't play this week. No, I do like that.
It is hard to try and pinpoint him on exactly who might be fit and who might not be fit. You do tend to deal a lot in touch and goes and maybe.
Yeah. But just speaking of Dyche as well, there's been a lot of rumours this week and the week previous mainly, because obviously him being a little bit not happy, we should say, with sort of like the spending power of the board, and saying that basically we need to be spending a bit more and stuff like that. A lot of it has come from the interview he did before the City game and a few little comments here and there, which is unusual for Dyche because he doesn't seem to do that sort of thing very often. And as he did say, I think he said after the Palace game or before the Palace game, I can't remember. I've been here for 7 years and I've fallen out with the board once, so I'll take that. That's fine. But what sort of like feeling are you getting from him now? Because like I said, the majority of it's been in the national press as well. And a lot of us tend to sort of like take that with a bit of pinch of salt. It's obviously if you guys, some of the other local journalists start getting a little bit worried, then I think that's when the worry starts transpiring over to us, and then we'll start getting a bit worried. But what sort of feeling are you getting from him? Like, what was his mood like today? Was there any more little comments and things like that?
Yeah, not particularly. I mean, going back, there's always been the odd quip from Dyche since I've started covering Burnley about the lack of finance, or we put 50p in for someone, or we'll be getting Messi this summer and that sort of thing. But I think he pointed out to us as well when he was having a chat last week that the situation hasn't dramatically changed at Burnley. There's never been a big pot of money, and they're unlikely to instantly give him a huge budget this summer. So that situation's the same. I think that the issue for Sean was the contract situation. Obviously, the COVID pandemic had an impact on it, but taking that out of the equation, that was a preventable thing that needed to go on until until late in the day. So I think that's where his main gripe, if you like, with the board comes from. He was asked today about his relationship with Mike Garlett, the chairman, and just said it's the same as normal. We're open and honest with each other, and he knows the situations he knows what I want in terms of recruitment and spending, and he knows what I want in terms of contracts extensions for players, because they've got quite a few players now who are out of contract in 2021. So what they don't want to, or what Sean doesn't want to do, is arrive in 12 months' time in an exact repeat of this situation and face that uncertainty headed into the summer of 2021. So his mood has been pretty pretty standard, relaxed. He's generally pretty honest and pretty candid in these press conferences anyway. Hence the fact that he had a bit of a pop at the board, been such a standout thing. But he seemed generally pretty happy. When I asked him about it before the Palace game, about his sort of future and the rumours and stuff, he said it had been put to bed. There's still that little sort of nagging feeling, I think, in the back of everybody's mind that he's not quite as happy as maybe he was, and that he would like to see a little bit more investment, as would no doubt every other manager of every other club. But it's a difficult one for Burnley, because although they make a profit every year in the accounts, or they certainly have in the last 3 or 4 years in Premier League terms, it's not like they've got 300 million that they're just going to be able to siphon a little bit of that off. I think they had cash reserves of 40 million, which, yes, is a lot of money, but in terms of spending on maybe 2-3 new Premier League players, that'll soon disappear. And the board are working on the uncertain sort of situation around the coronavirus pandemic and the impact that might have. Obviously, no match day income at the minute, so there is a little balancing act. I think from the manager's point of view, he just wants that balance tipped a little bit more in terms of his favour than the board at the moment.
Yeah. One thing I do want to ask, and I forgot to mention this to you off camera, so apologies for dropping this on you a little bit. But it's just come to my head now. Is obviously there's been some rumours about a potential takeover or potential investment. Is there any truth in that, or is there anything that you've seen any truth in that? And is this sort of like why the board might be holding back a little bit to sort of like invest a lot of their money?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything concrete other than you occasionally hear whispers around the situation, and I remember going back maybe 18 months, 2 years, there were similar sort of whispers around potential takeovers. I mean, that might well be part of it if Burnley, on the face of it, are primed for a bit of investment, aren't they? They're a really well-run club. They've got a really good training ground, free. They're, well, I hate to use the word established, but on the brink of 5 years in the Premier League, that's reasonably established. That would scream out to be a good investment. And there is, I think Dyche has said previously, although Mike Garlick is a wealthy man by Premier League owner standards, he's not in comparison to some of the others. So from that side of things, there is a ceiling, I guess, to where Burnley can hope to move on and push on towards. Having said that, I don't think there's been any kind of offer as such for the club, or that it's anywhere near that level as yet. Whether or not there are people sniffing around or weighing it up, I don't know.
What feeling, going back to Dash, what sort of like feeling do you get from him then? Do you think he'll still be here next season?
Well, the $1 million question, isn't
well,
it?
Yeah, isn't it? Like, I'm not obviously not asking like, will he be here next season? Like, what sort of like vibe do you get from sort of like his demeanour, should I say?
Yeah, I think he is very good at avoiding. I mean, I asked him directly, do you think you'll be, or is there any kind of reassurance you can give people that you'll be here on the first day of the season? And he didn't say yes, and he didn't say no. He skirted around the issue, as he is prone to do on things like that. I think it's a difficult one. I think the difference with these sort of links that came out about his future this time around was that he wasn't been linked with another club. We've been there and gone down that path plenty of times. He was just been linked with leaving. Yeah. And that's sort of what I said to him, really, along those lines of, it's one thing where there might be a vacancy at a West Ham, for example, and he crops up in the list of managers, but it's another thing for a story to emerge that he just has sort of run his course with Burnley. But he rightly said he's been here 7.5 years. He's had countless speculation stories in that time, and he's still here. I do think, well, there is still tension between him and the board. It's not quite what it was in that respect, and I do think the manager wants a little bit more. He used the phrase, he doesn't want to break it, he just wants to stretch where Burnley are at the minute. And I think particularly with the contract situation, we know that he's been a fan of Jeff Hendrick. Jeff Hendrick's played pretty much 75% of the games under Dyche, more so this season with the injuries to Johan and Robbie Brady, and that sort of thing where we could have avoided that, but we sat on our hands a little bit from a club's perspective, has undoubtedly sort of riled him. Whether that's enough for him to just walk away, I just can't see it at the moment. I just can't see that he would just disappear without either another club coming in for him, or B, a little bit more than just we've lost a couple of players at the end of the contract.
Yeah, I saw that fall on your side. Obviously, I'd watch the press conferences when I can. Obviously, I don't think I've not seen one since after the lockdown, so I'm not sure if the club are putting them out. But I used to watch them, and I sort of get the vibe at the minute with the stuff that he's saying. That I just can't see him sort of leaving to go nowhere. I personally, I think if he was going to go, he'd take a step up. Personally, if that was ever going to be the case, I don't think he'd just leave and go nowhere. But I fall on your side. Maybe it's hopeful thinking for me, obviously being a fan of the club, but I just can't see it. But anyway, we'll move on because I don't want to keep sort of talking about that sort of thing. But I want to talk to you about Josh Brownhill as well, because you mentioned Jeff Hendrick there, and obviously Jeff Hendrick's now left after not having his contract renewed, or should I say not accepting the contract that we offered to him. And Brownhill's come in and played in his position as well. Now, it might be a bit of a mix-up this week with Jack Cork being out, like Brownhill could go into his preferred central midfield role, but he has been playing on the right-hand side of the midfield, and I think he's played really, really well, hasn't he? I've been very impressed with him myself.
Yeah, he was excellent against Palace. I mean, the City game was
one of them, innit? Yeah,
tricky one to judge him on. His first Premier League start and Burnley having precious little of the ball. One thing I would say from Brownhill's point of view is he covers some ground, and that is a massive tick in the Sean Dyche checklist of things we need at Burnley. But I thought second half against Watford, he grew into that game a little bit more. Showed that he has got that perhaps attacking intent from midfield that we don't really see aside from Dwight in terms of popping up with goals from open play. He got into a couple of good positions against Watford, where he should have done better, really. I think he sort of skewed one wide and he misjudged a header. But he was getting into those sort of attacking central positions that perhaps a Jeff Hendrick might not have done. And then against Palace, not only was he effective on the ball, he rarely gave possession away. He also really helped Phil Bardsley out with Zaha, and we saw very little of Zaha in that game, and a large part of that was to the protection that Brownhill offered, really. So encouraging signs, I would say, so far from him.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he gets on in the middle this week, if that is the case, because obviously I think we originally did sign him in to either replace Cork or be the backup to Cork. So it'd be interesting to see how do you think he'll get on in the middle if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't signed as a right winger, and he wasn't signed as we might use him to replace Jeff Hendrick. He was signed to add the options in the middle of the midfield to Jack and Ashley Westwood in a way that Danny Drinkwater didn't. I mean, there is still a gap in central midfield there, isn't there? So it is his preferred position. I haven't seen him play live for Bristol City, but everything I've heard about how he got on there and the bits I have seen is that he was excellent box-to-box midfielder, energetic, capable of scoring from range, capable of getting in those attacking positions, making those sort of late runs into the box in a kind of like a Paul Scholes kind of way, just sort of ghost into the box and get there. So a run of games in central midfield, if that's where we end up with a Jack Cork injury, it will be really interesting to see how he gets on, because it will give a bit more of a different dynamic to Burnley in that sense, particularly if they're still ending up playing one up front. I know they might have Jay and Mate Vidra this weekend, but if they are having that one striker, or forced into having one striker, having a, like we saw with Dwight in the hole at Palace, having that option there from a Brownhill off the base of a platform of Jack Cork and Ashley Westwood is a decent looking setup, really, if you're able to put Dwight back onto the left as well and bring him sort of his crossing ability back into things, which you do lose with him playing centrally.
Yeah, as well, you mentioned this weekend then. Let's have a look at the game this weekend. Obviously, it's Sheffield United at home, although it doesn't really feel like home at the minute, but Sheffield United at Turf Moor. It's going to be a tough one. They've just recently had a very, very good result against Tottenham. 3-0, or they were 3-1 actually, weren't it? Sorry, they got a late goal in Tottenham. But it's going to be a tough game. They're a good side. And I know you've said we've spoken about the spending power of other Premier League clubs and stuff, or Burnley compared to other Premier League clubs. I think Sheffield United is an example because I think Chris Wilder's had quite a bit of money to spend. I think they spent 60 odd million or something it was in the summer. Don't quote me on that, listeners, please, because I do very often get things wrong. But obviously, Ollie McBurney came in for around 16. That already beats our transfer target record. And some other players as well, whose name escapes me because I don't make any notes off top of this as well. We're a lot more than that. So maybe I can't remember. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game at the weekend, isn't it? Though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we know it's going to be sort of two teams hard to break down, reasonably evenly matched if you look at it on paper. I mean, the reverse game at Bramall Lane, Burnley were awful in that first 45 minutes. I think it was 3-0 at half time in that one actually, and at no point did they look like sort of getting to grips with Sheffield United. And it was one of those games where you just thought, where's the energy and the sort of, even the closing down and being first to those second balls, and something we've seen so much of Burnley in these last two games just wasn't there on that day. And if you fall down energetic wise, and if you're not quite at it from that point of view, you'll struggle against Sheffield United because we know exactly what they're going to give you. So it will be an interesting game, but I wonder if the turnaround might have a little bit of a part to play as well. Obviously, Sheffield United playing Thursday night and then Sunday lunchtime. That's not long, especially given the volume of games they've played. Given that they had one more to play than Burnley in the first place in this sort of project restart section. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see. But Burnley can go into it with confidence. The issue again is going to be the possibility of changing it off the bench and the fact that it just isn't really going to be there. There's not going to be an option of bringing on sort of an attack-minded player unless we get 20 minutes out of Johan. We're just not going to be able to see that. But in fairness, I thought that before the Palace game as well, and it didn't materialise. It was Burnley managed with what they had, and Kevin Long dropped in and they saw it out.
Yeah, to be fair, obviously we did well against Palace. We might have injuries, and I was on a Crystal Palace podcast, Back of the Nest, and I did say to them guys, I said if we had our full strength squad out, I'd be quite confident, especially if Zaha was missing. I mean, I know he played, but he was technically missing, so I was right with that one. But it's the same again with this one. If we had not necessarily a fully fit squad, but if we didn't have half of the squad missing, I'd be quietly confident with the two results we've just got on home turf, having not lost at home since New Year's Day as well, and with the results, like I said, I've had and the confidence we've had from that, I would be quietly confident. But I think with the injuries at the minute, again, I'd take a draw. How do you think it's going to pan out?
Yeah, it is a really difficult one to call, isn't it? I think you can make an argument for all three outcomes. I just think Burnley, having had the extra period of rest, I know Sheffield United have got a couple of players out injured as well. I think I saw this morning that Fleck and Lundstrom weren't going to be available. They've obviously had to reshuffle a little bit defensively as a result of that as well. I think Jack O'Connell's been missing as well. So I didn't watch the game against Spurs, but I watched them play United, and they were so open, unbelievably, for what I've seen of Sheffield United so far this season. I do think it'll be close. I think it wouldn't surprise me if it was 1-0 Burnley again. I just think the turnaround might have a little bit to play from a Sheffield United point of view, and if Burnley have got Jay Rodriguez available as well, then he's been superb this season for my money. I know he's not played as a starter, but he's featured in pretty much every game, and he just provides that work rate from the front, that endeavour, that eye for goal, and obviously Vidra coming into the side and doing pretty well in the last half a dozen games as well, just gives you a bit more of an attacking options that way. So yeah, I'm gonna go for a Burnley win. Why not?
Yeah, happy days. I'll take that obviously. But just as well, going back to the point you made then about the turnaround and things like that, and the injuries. Again, it's like I think I've just said it, and it's one for me. Like if we had our full strength squad and stuff, I'd be quietly confident in that. But fingers crossed, because we owe him one anyway. Like you say, after the Bramall Lane one. But just having a look at some of the games that we have, just because I watched them against United, and they were very, very poor against United, as you mentioned. They were too open, far too open. But against Spurs, they seemed to sort of like address that. But having said that, Spurs were just defensively woeful, and I think we would be better on the day defensively than I wouldn't normally say this about us compared to Tottenham, but from watching Tottenham at the time of recording, it was yesterday, weren't it? Because we're recording on Friday, it was Thursday, weren't it? Yeah. To watching them, I think we'll defend so much better than Tottenham did on that day, and I'm pretty confident that we can defend better. And because of that, like you say, I think it will be tight, but like you say, it can go either way. But just quickly moving on as well, I know you've got some stuff to write and things like that, so I won't keep you too long. But obviously, the transfer window would be open. I don't think it is at the minute. I'm not really sure what's going on with the transfer window at the minute. In fact, just quickly before I go on there, what actually is it open? Is it shut? What's the crack with it?
As far as I'm aware, there is no set parameter for the transfer window as yet. So it hasn't been decided, and you can't at the moment purchase a player from another club. You could sign Jeff Hendrick if you wanted to, but he wouldn't be available to play in the Premier League this season anyway. And I think we've seen with Sane that they've agreed a deal with Bayern for him, but he can't play in the Champions League. So, but we all know that Burnley's transfer window business will be 2 weeks before the transfer window closes. It doesn't matter if it's open now or not in that sense.
I think 2 weeks before is probably a bit ambitious. It's only about 2 hours before, isn't it? But obviously we will just go on because there's been a lot of rumours. Again, it's always from like Football Insider 247.com or Goal.com, and nothing really with that you tend to look at and think, oh, that could actually happen there. There's obviously been the Danish fullback Marley. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. But what sort of things have you heard then? Like, is there anything of any substance out there that you're aware of?
In terms of actual names, there's not a great deal I can give you at the moment. I think it'll also be a surprise to absolutely nobody that Burnley are looking for a wide midfielder and ultimately a right back. Phil Bardsley obviously signed for another year, but I think he's just turned 35. He's not a long-term option there. Matt Lowndes contract next summer. One name that's been doing the rounds for what seems like 2 seasons is Jayden Vogel at Derby, who I do think might be there is definitely something in that one. But obviously Derby might end up in the Premier League with their run of form at the moment. So I think it'll be a case of wait and see, and a case of what can we do with the money we've got available in the time frame that is given to us by the Premier League in terms of what the transfer window is. But it's pretty clear that a couple of new faces at least are needed. I'd be surprised if we see 3, 4, 5 new players coming in, but looking at that squad now, and I know there's 6 or 7 injuries, which is not the norm, but you've seen where we're left with a couple of kids on the bench who haven't played a game full stop in a season environment, let alone play the Premier League game, and it wouldn't be fair to chuck a couple of those in the midst of a Premier League campaign either. So there's definitely improvements that are needed, midfield particularly, and right back as well are the 2 areas.
What about outgoings as well then, just before we wrap up? Because obviously there's a lot of interest in Dwight McNeil. I'm not too worried about Dwight leaving, to be honest. My main worries are James Tarkowski, because obviously he's only got a year left on his contract after this season, and obviously Nick Pope as well. And I know there's a lot of clubs sniffing around Tarky as well, so I just wondering if there's anything in that, or whether or not you know anything on any potential outgoings that, fingers crossed, there actually isn't any.
Yeah, I mean, Dwight is the one who gets the most headlines, isn't he, in terms of availability, and the links with Man United have been consistent almost feels like since Dwight came into the team. He's down to a long-term contract, which helps. I think off the top of my head, although I would have to check it, I've got a feeling that Tarkowski has got another 2 years on his deal. I've got a feeling he's not 2022. So that puts Burnley in a stronger bargaining position on that front. It would be no surprise if somebody, a Leicester or somebody like that, came looking at a Tarkowski or potentially even a Charlie Taylor, depending on what happens with Ben Chilwell. What Dyche has said recently, and what is the case now at Burnley, is that they're in a position now to, even with this pandemic and the implications financially, they're in a position to play hardball on the price. And I think we saw that last summer when Leicester were looking at Tarkowski, and Burnley said, well, you're looking at 30 million plus or 35 million. Previously, that might not have been the case. They might have needed to meet in the middle a little bit and perhaps take a lower figure. But at the moment, that isn't the situation. And for all we said, Burnley's squad might need a few more players. The squad that they have got they are in a position to keep if other clubs come knocking. Nick Pope's an interesting one at that. There was speculation with Chelsea going back probably to January, actually.
Yeah.
Thing that seems to have died down a little bit now. Again, he's under contract for a good number of years. He signed an extension last summer. I can't see him going this summer. Tarkowski and Taylor are probably the ones I think there might be interest in, just because of where other clubs might need to strengthen and where they might look. But I think Burnley can knock back any offers until we're getting into sort of, if you're looking at 40 million plus for James Tarkowski with 2 years left, then you're in the realms of the good deal for the club, the good deal for the player, the good deal for everybody, if Burnley can reinvest the money as well. Because that's the other thing. You lose a Taylor or a Tarkowski, you don't have a natural replacement like Tarkowski was when Michael Keane left. You left with Eric Peters, who's the wrong side of 30, and you're left with, well, Kevin Long and whatever may or may not happen to Ben Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, you filled me with a little bit more confidence there. We're talking about how, Tarky's got 2 years on. Apologies, I thought it was only 1 year left at the end of the season, and you're not thinking Port will leave. But yeah, if they do leave, I can't see Ben Gibson pulling on a Burnley shirt again. I just can't see it happening the way it's gone. And yeah, Eric Peters as well. Charlie Taylor's an interesting one. It's not somebody I'd actually thought of leaving, but obviously you mentioned that there is a lot of interest in Chilwell at Leicester, and if he leaves Leicester, that again would seem as the perfect replacement for Leicester.
Yeah. I mean, Dyche is a huge fan of Charlie Taylor, and I'm just going off where other clubs might need to strengthen, and suddenly Charlie Taylor comes into that mix if a Chilwell, for example, leaves, or I think there's a couple of clubs who might be in the market for left backs, and he's had another strong. I know he's had an injury disrupted season, but he's been another who's the second half of the season in particular has performed really well and really really consistently. So it'd be no surprise to see him perhaps linked with other clubs, but he is another one who they did well. Was it earlier this season or the end of last season, tying down to a long-term contract anyway? Yeah. So they'll be in a position to knock back anything that does come should anything arise.
Well, brilliant. Thank you for that, because that fills me with a lot of confidence in terms of some of the players leaving. But that has been Alex James from Lancashire Live on Turfcast Podcast. Alex, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Hopefully, we'll see you again in a few weeks. We are going to be getting more and more journalists on. So again, thank you, Alex, and we'll see you in a bit.
Nice one. Cheers, Joe.